Who doesn't love some infrastructure? Out on the roads, at the airport, under a bridge. Oop, not that bridge. Some infrastructure looks good. Some infrastructure looks bad. Why is that? Who put that there? And why is it taking so long? What do all these maps mean? All this and more on I kinda don't even know where to start here, because if there's anything that people have regular experience with every single day, it's infrastructure. You've driven on a road before, or used a sink, or fought a rat in a subway. You know what infrastructure is. And if you live in America, chances are you don't need me to tell you that our infrastructure has been in need of serious repair for decades. There's been a lot of discussion lately about which upgrades take priority and what we should be doing to address this. But whether it's a hypertrain or a turnpike, this construction's gotta go somewhere. So let's talk about it. I know some people's immediate reaction is going to be to scuttle on down to the comment section and talk about another triggered SJW who thinks the roads are racist. And feel free to do that, because all comments boost my engagement with the algorithm. But in all seriousness, if we're going to have a conversation about the revitalization of American infrastructure, we also need to understand why it's gotten so bad in the first place. And we need to recognize that the policy decisions that got us where we are today on both state and federal levels were designed overwhelmingly to help the rich and hurt the poor. I mean, it was practically a requirement for every city to slap a brand new highway down on top of their minority communities with the new policy known as urban renewal. A series of grant and loan policies that involved the seizure and destruction of huge swaths of both public and private land, specifically for the purpose of modernizing the aging infrastructure in these historically neglected communities. Starting in 1949, this policy would go on to exist until the 70s, when the funding finally dried up for it, leaving many projects that were still in construction half finished.
What's here? What's here? Just the grass.
The intent was meant to improve the living conditions of African Americans. The actual outcome of an urban renewal, that was another story. And with the city, with the county, with the state, with the federal government not keeping its word to rebuild the neighborhoods.
Robert Moses, who was head of New York's Slum Clearance Committee, had the power to pick and choose which companies got the condemned land.
They would take over these large chunks of incredibly valuable real estate. Imagine real estate in Manhattan. All of the contracts came through the political clubs. They gave them to their friends who were builders or realtors or phony corporations.
By its end, this policy would result in the large-scale destruction of historic buildings, the displacement of hundreds of thousands of families, and the loss of thousands of small businesses in mostly minority and low-income communities. Not to mention the $13 billion in federal funds that had gone to these projects. And well, if it wasn't urban renewal, it was the new federal and state policy of highway building. And it just so happens that all of these highways seem to go up in and around minority communities, specifically Black communities.
Wherever urban renewal took place, we saw the decline of living standards for African Americans, higher unemployment, poorer health, and academic achievement.
It was overwhelmingly these Black families that were pushed out of their neighborhoods to make room for new highways. And why did we need the highways? Because the GI Billers and white flighters had made their way out to the newly developed suburbs, and they needed a way to drive into the city where their jobs were. And has anyone ever told you that cars suck? Okay, so this isn't a video about cars, but it is a video about infrastructure. And what the hell is infrastructure if it ain't all this shit? So real quick, let's do cars suck. We destroyed public transit in this country and rebuilt our cities around the car, and for what? Gas-guzzling, pollution-spewing, traffic-jamming, road-hogging form of transportation that moves people around less effectively than everything else. Oh, but Garrett, electric cars! They got their own fucking problems. And then there's him. Oh, I'll get to you. And you know where your city wants you to drive those cars? To their brand new billion-dollar sports stadium. Not a penny in taxpayer dollars wasted. Sports. Go watch a sport. Go buy a $15 hot dog and a $20 beer. Don't ask how many houses were demolished to build this thing, and don't ask how the money could have better gone into the community. Just watch the sports. Brought to you by Budweiser and the NFL. Or maybe you'll have the special misfortune of living near an area that's hosting the Olympic Games. Because what else do you need but another billion-dollar stadium? Yay!
For the opening ceremony, hundreds of protesters demonstrated outside. Earlier that day, thousands of flag-waving protesters blocked traffic outside, also calling for the outcome.
Just hours to go for the opening ceremony of the Beijing Winter Games, protests against the Games were held across the world. In San Francisco, a coalition of groups including people from Hong Kong, Tibet and Uyghurs gathered at the Golden Gate Bridge and urged people not to
it's very important to let the world know that China doesn't deserve to this privilege to host the Winter Olympics, and especially the crimes that are being committed against Uyghurs, Tibetans, and other minority groups.
Isso que eles jogaram, essa bomba vermelha, representar aqui a guerra. Nós estamos no Iraque. Nós estamos no Iraque. Isso aqui é Iraque. Isso aqui é o Iraque.
Consider the place you live, whether it's your town or your state. What projects take priority? What areas lose power first? Where is there still lead in the pipes or the walls? The problems with our infrastructure in America today aren't necessarily caused by a lack of funding. It's a lack of will. Every year, budgets meant for maintaining public utilities get smaller, while private corporations and the politicians they work with rake in billions off of taxpayers. Even in the wealthiest country in the world, we barely see a fraction of what our tax dollars do. Unless you live in the Middle East, then you've probably got a very good idea of what that money gets used for. And while Biden's infrastructure bill is the single largest investment in our country's infrastructure that we've ever seen, it's still not even close to enough to fix what's been broken for over a century. People don't live in rundown houses in the bad parts of town because they feel like it. You do it because that's how you survive. And because the politicians that are supposed to be representing us are busy driving up housing prices for their wealthy donors. The truth is that bad neighborhoods only exist because we created them. So the next time you go out, check how long it takes to find a pothole or catch a bus. How much are you paying in parking fees or for ticket and fare prices? Do you feel like your community was designed to serve your needs? If not yours, whose? Hey everybody, thanks for watching, and an especially big thanks to my two generous patrons, James and Sky Bunny. If you would like to be honored among their ranks, you can join my Patreon, link in the description. You not only get to see some of the behind-the-scenes workings of the videos, but you also get all of them a day early. I'm actually going to be moving pretty soon, so I don't know when exactly my next video is going to be out, but I've got a ton of different projects in the works, and I can't wait to share them with you all. So I'll see you then.